This is Section 3 notes for the Overland Trail unit. Summary phrases. The definition of a summary phrase is a concise verbal expression used to describe a given algebraic expression similar to the label for an answer to a word problem. Summary phrases should not include mathematical terms such as plus, times, divided, etc. So it is going to be verbal words that you write to describe the expression given. If you were going to do a word problem, it would be like the label that you would associate with that answer. If your answer was 50, 50 what? Like what did you get after you did the word problem? That's what we are going to work on today. So on the next section here, it tells you to use the symbols and meanings listed on page 36 of your textbook. I have a screenshot here of the symbols and meanings from page 36. So let's look at this example 1a. So if we were to multiply the variables f times w times t, what would we get? So let's look at the meanings over here. F, the number of families in a wagon train, times W, the number of women in a family, times T, the number of wagon trains in a year. So that's a bit to understand all three of those variables at once. So I like to write each variable kind of as a fraction in what it is. So F is the families in a wagon train. So families per train. And then we have W, which is the women in a family. And then T is the wagon trains in a year. Sorry for the delay here. My slate is not keeping up. Goodness. And so when we're looking at this, kind of like simplifying, what are we multiplying together? What's left over? See here, our families could cancel out, and our trains could cancel out. So it's a numerator, denominator, denominator, numerator. So canceling out like fractions, we're left with women in a year. And so that would be the summary phrase. The summary phrase is not this long sentence that's the families in a train times the women of the family times the trains of the year. Like we don't use the word times, even though that's what we were mathematically doing. But after we multiply that material together, what did we get? We would get the number of women in a year. Let's look at the next one, C times P. So C is the number of children in a family, and P is the weight of an ox. If you were to multiply the number of children in a family times the weight of an ox, that has no meaning. That is your answer. Even though C times P looks fantastic, looks like it should mean something, but when I look at the value of C and the value of P, there's no reason to multiply them together. There's no meaning after you multiply those two numbers together. So if there is no meaning, you can write no meaning. C, men per family is M, and B, is the water per person. So if I take the number of men per family, and I take that times the amount of water per person, nothing cancel out. However, this does make sense. So I have, let's say, 5 men in my family, and I have 5 ounces per person. I could multiply them together and get the amount of water for all of the men in the family. Again, amount of water for the men in the family. And I'm going to be a little bit more specific, and I'm going to say for one day. On example number 2, we are writing the algebraic expression for the summary phrase. So here is the condensed, concise summary phrase: women and children in a family. So we're going to use these symbols and figure out what symbols do I need to combine mathematically so that my answer would yield women and children. So looking at the variables at the bottom, I see that I could use a W for women and C for children. And if I were to add W plus C, I would get the women and children in a family. So pretty straightforward on A. To calculate the number of adults in a wagon train, I need to ask myself, who are the adults? I would say the men and women would be the adults. So I'd want to add the number of women plus the number of men plus the number of women. And I want to, that's per family. I want to then multiply times F to then calculate all of the adults in the wagon train, because F is the families in the wagon train. So adding M and W gave me all of the adults in one family, multiply times the number of families in the wagon train, giving me all of the adults in the wagon train. Yokes per family. A yoke is the wooden apparatus that holds the 2 oxen side by side. And I need to know how many yokes there would be for the whole family. So I would want to use the for the yokes per wagon. And I would then multiply by the number of wagons in the family. And that would give me then the number of yokes per family. So if we want to look at the same kind of strategy as I used in example 1, A is yokes per wagon, and V is wagons per family. The wagons could cancel and I would get yokes per family. And lastly, amount of water consumed by the children in one family. So C would be all of the children in a family, and B is the amount of beverage for one day. For one person, I could take C times B. So with these examples, you have now completed the summary phrase notes section 3.